In our headlines on this Tuesday afternoon, October 31st, here in South Korea. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu firmly crosses out chances of a ceasefire with Hamas, claiming it would be the same as surrendering to terrorism. His remarks come as Israeli forces expand the size and scope of their ground operation into Gaza. Meanwhile, at the National Assembly earlier this morning, President Yoon seeks to rally support for his budget bill for next year, which marks a 2.8% on-year increase, the lowest since 2005, amid allocation of funds to areas in most need. And Samsung Electronics reports an operating profit of some 2.4 trillion won for the third quarter, which is a 77% retreat on year, but a remarkable improvement from the previous quarters of this year on the back of semiconductors and smartphones. President Yoon is placing priority on stabilizing the cost of living and on improving people's livelihoods next year. Addressing the National Assembly earlier on this Tuesday, the president sought to rally support for his budget proposal for 2024, which marks a 2.8% on-year increase, the lowest since the year 2005. Keeping this in mind, President Yoon made a point of emphasizing that the modest budget bill did not entail spending cuts, but rather efficient allocation of funds to areas in most need. He also urged support for his broader agenda, including reforms in pension, labor and education, as well as the medical sector. Findings for the month of September show Korea's industrial output, retail sales and facility investment all gained on month, bolstering an overall sense of market optimism. Our Park Gun-woo has more.
South Korea's overall industrial production, spending and investments all saw a jump in September. According to data released by Statistics Korea on Tuesday, the total industrial production increased 1.1% in September compared to the month before. This was mainly due to increased production in the mining and manufacturing sectors of 1.8% on month.
As mining and manufacturing production increased by 3.1% in quarter two and 1.9% in the third quarter, it seems like a positive sign of recovery in the second half of the year compared to the first half.
Although auto production plunged in September, chip production, including memory semiconductors, rose around 13% compared to August, driving growth in the industry. The service industry was also up by 0.4% due to rises in the wholesale and retail sector, while sports and leisure saw a drop. Retail sales, which is a key gauge of private spending, jumped on month, especially as sales of food and beverages and cosmetics increased. A Statistics Korea official said food and beverages saw an increase during the Chuseok holiday period. Infrastructure investment also saw an increase of over 8%, as investment in machinery and transportation equipment both jumped. Park Gun-woo, Arirang News.
Samsung Electronics has made public its third quarter business report card, and it shows a remarkable operating profit compared to the previous quarters of this year, as the company trimmed losses in semiconductors and made profit in smartphones. Our Moon Hae-ryun reports.
South Korean tech giant Samsung Electronics finally surpassed the trillion Korean won mark for its operating profits for the first time this year, despite a sluggish time for the chip sector. On Tuesday, the company reported an operating profit of just under 2.5 trillion won for the third quarter of the year, which at the current rate is around $1.86 billion. While this is more than a 77% drop compared to the same period last year, it's a vast improvement compared to the previous quarters this year. In the first quarter, the firm recorded an operating profit of just over 640 billion Korean won, or $475 million, followed by 668.5 billion Korean won, or $496 million. Sales in the third quarter fell by over 12% on year. These latest figures were mainly attributed to high performance in the mobile and display sector and a lower than expected deficit in the company's semiconductor division. Samsung's DS division, which deals with chips, reported that they were $2.78 billion in the red in the third quarter, marking the third quarter in a row that it has recorded a deficit. However, owing to the rising average sales price of DRAM chips, the deficit was around $445 million lower than the previous quarter. The latest figures released by Statistics Korea on the same day show that semiconductor production in South Korea jumped by nearly 13% on month in September, showing that demand for chips is continuing to improve and the firm can expect to continue its recovery in the final quarter of the year. Meanwhile, Samsung's MX division, made up of mobile communications and consumer electronics, patched up the losses made in the chip sector, with its foldable smartphones Galaxy Z Flip 5 and Fold 5, as well as wearable devices showing continued popularity. The display division also reported a large jump in profits with its small to medium-sized panels. 문혜련, Arirang News.
Israeli ground forces have rescued a soldier kidnapped by the Palestinian militant group Hamas during its October 7th assault. Our Lee Seung-jae has the latest.
An Israeli soldier who was kidnapped by Hamas during the October 7th attack has been rescued as the Israeli Defense Forces, Special Forces, and the Shin Bet Intelligence Agency conducted a ground operation in Gaza on Sunday night. Private Yuri Megadish is the first soldier rescued by Israel since more than 200 people, including dozens of Israeli soldiers, were taken by Hamas. Megadish was a member of a unit of female soldiers in charge of monitoring the Gaza border via surveillance cameras. The Israeli military says she's in good health and has met with her family. Despite the international community calling for a humanitarian ceasefire in the Gaza Strip, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel will not agree to a ceasefire, as it would be equivalent to surrendering to Hamas and terrorism. During a press conference on Monday, the Prime Minister went on to condemn Hamas for trying to destroy the promise of Israel's future. He added that just as the United States would not agree to a ceasefire after the bombing of Pearl Harbor or the September 11th terrorist attack, Israel will continue to fight. Meanwhile, the Israeli military announced on Monday that it had sent additional troops to the Gaza Strip as it strengthened ground operations in the Palestinian enclave. In a statement released by the military, it said that additional troops were deployed as it looks to achieve its war goals. In addition, the military announced that the head of the IDF Southern Command, Major General Yaron Finkelman, went into the Gaza Strip to assess the ground combat situation. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Here on the peninsula, Seoul and Washington are engaged in a large-scale air drill this week, and pundits believe Pyongyang may resort to provocations in protest. Our defense correspondent Choi Min-jung reports.
Seoul and Washington are currently conducting round-the-clock aerial drills dubbed Vigilant Defense in the skies around the Korean peninsula. The 5-day exercise, which kicked off Monday, involved some 130 South Korean and U.S. aircraft, including Seoul's F-35A fighters, the E-737 airborne early warning and control aircraft, and the KC-330 transport plane, as well as Washington's F-35A and F-35B fighters. The exercise is aimed at enhancing the Allies' combined operational capabilities against North Korea's military provocations.
South Korea and the U.S. Air Force plan to master wartime operation procedures and check operational capabilities.
This is being done through drills which include combat formation, defensive counter-air drills, airborne alert interdiction, and close air support operations. Colonel Kang Geun-shin, the director of the exercise, had previously said the intensive training is similar to actual combat and will allow the Allies to respond to any provocation by the enemy. That being said, there is growing speculation that North Korea may stage missile launches in a show of discontent with the joint drills.
It is highly likely that North Korea will carry out various forms of provocation during this training period to create insecurity on the Korean peninsula.
North Korea, which has previously called such drills rehearsals for invasion, launched missiles during last year's Seoul-Washington joint air exercise. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
And in other news, a farm in Changwon, Gyeongsangnam-do Province has reported the region's first case of lumpy skin disease. Now, 29 cows from this farm have been culled thus far. Authorities say 20,000 cows in 454 farms within a 10-kilometer radius have been examined and no additional cases have been confirmed. Now, as of Monday, 67 locations across the nation have reported lumpy skin disease in cattle. Vaccination of cattle nationwide is expected to be completed by November 10th. In the meantime, though, the number of infections is expected to rise as it reportedly takes some 3 weeks for antibodies to form. A little over a year ago, the Yoon administration shared an ambitious strategy aimed at using digital technology to offer convenient and efficient public services to people here. So how far has it come to providing the public with tailored and transparent administrative services? My colleague Shin Ha-young reports.
Enabling people to receive services tailored to their needs by integrating information and data across the private and public sectors. This is what the Yoon administration has been focusing on through the Digital Platform Government Initiative, or DPG. First launched in September last year, a presidential committee on the digital platform government spent its first year creating an action plan.
The claiming process for actual medical expenses insurance will be simplified. Policyholders had to visit hospitals to obtain related documents and submit them to the insurance company. Similarly, for export companies, the process of applying for trade financing has been simplified by enabling electronic submission of documents from the Korea Customs Service to financial institutions.
These efforts have extended abroad. During President Yoon's state visit to the Middle East last week, South Korean tech giant Naver struck a deal with the Saudi Arabian government to create a digital twin platform, a virtual geospatial model of the real world for urban planning and management in 5 Saudi cities.
Establishing and disseminating a digital twin is part of the digital platform government's plan. The latest deal is the outcome of cooperation between the government and a private company. It is meaningful as it is the first export case of the digital platform government.
In terms of digital infrastructure, Ko says South Korea is a global powerhouse. But he thinks the country falls short in utilizing digital technology, which is the reason for creating the world's first use case of hyperscale AI across government departments.
We are creating a hyperscale AI for the government using refined data and reinforcement learning from human feedback, specifically from public officials. This can be used for data analysis and policymaking and addressing social welfare issues. It can be also used to prevent accidents like the Itaewon tragedy by analyzing traffic data to proactively identify potential risks in densely populated areas.
Last September, the South Korean government published what it calls the Digital Bill of Rights. Ko says that the DPG and the Digital Bill of Rights are inseparable.
The digital platform government plans to demonstrate the Digital Bill of Rights, focusing on improving people's welfare and rights. To alleviate concerns about misusing personal information, we'll establish a system that enables citizens to transparently verify how and where their data is shared and utilized within the government.
Under the theme of government innovation with the digital platform government, there will be an exhibition in November showcasing the achievements of the DPG and demonstrating how it'll shape the future of the government. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
Seoul's Culture Ministry will seek to advance accessibility to Korea's cultural contents both here on the domestic front and overseas. Our correspondent Song Yoo-jin covers this intention and more.
It's been a busy 3 weeks for South Korea's new Minister of Culture, Sports and Tourism, Yoon. Since taking office earlier this month, he's been crisscrossing provinces, engaging with industry officials. This is his second term as Culture Minister, having previously served from 2008 to 2011. Back in the role, Yoo says he will make Korean culture more accessible both domestically and on the global stage. On the domestic front, he's prioritizing the transformation of regions outside Seoul into vibrant cultural hubs. This involves establishing more state-run performing arts companies and what's called the Local 100 project, which spotlights 100 landmarks, cultural assets, and artisans.
We aim to engage with people who are eager to participate in this project, enabling them to immerse themselves in the unique culture, cuisine, and products of each region. This initiative is expected to breathe new life into regions outside the capital.
Globally, Minister Yu envisions enhancing the competitiveness of Korean content by providing support for content creators to safeguard their intellectual property rights, as well as allocating 1.7 trillion Korean won, or $1.3 billion for content creation next year. When asked about his top priority, his answer was amending the Copyright Act.
The revision should take into account the interests of content creators, producers, streaming services, and other involved stakeholders. I'll constantly engage, discuss, and communicate with these parties.
Based on these, the Culture Ministry will lay out detailed policies for each sector by the end of this year. 송유진, Arirang News.
Arirang TV's Simply Kpop recently had the pleasure of hosting a Norwegian pop star. Watch the delight of his fans here and beyond. Our Yoon has the highlights.
Simply Kpop, also known as Simply Contour, is a live concert program broadcast by Arirang TV and hosted by Lee Dae-hee. It features live performances by a variety of K-pop artists and plays an essential role as a platform to interact with fans and share music with an audience both in South Korea and internationally. In this week's episode, Norwegian pop star Peder Elias took to the stage as a special guest, where he shared his eagerness to connect with his dedicated fan base.
안녕하세요. My name is Peder Elias. I am an artist, singer-songwriter from Norway, and I love being in Korea and playing shows and meeting all the beautiful people here, and excited to do this interview right now.
Peder has already secured fans across Southeast Asia and here in Korea, where his single Loving You Girl achieved chart success in 2021. This year, he returned to South Korea for a live concert and made a special visit to Arirang TV.
Then I also heard later that this was the show where international artists go as well, so then I thought that would be really cool.
Simply Kpop Contour is also seeking to make its shows more inclusive by producing special country-themed episodes where they invite fans from those countries to join the broadcast remotely. The show became a platform for Peder to share his music with an even broader audience.
I think it was almost like love at first sight. For me, it was kind of Koreans were the first people that really started listening to my music. So therefore it was like natural kind of special bond, because they changed a lot for me and gave me a lot of opportunities through discovering first my song Bonfire and later lots of more songs.
Over the years, Simply Kpop has hosted a range of K-pop artists, including global superstars like BTS, reaffirming its status as a stage where well-known K-pop artists and emerging talents come together to share their passion for music. Hosted and subtitled in multiple languages, the show airs worldwide every Friday and is streamed on YouTube every other Monday. Yoon, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. In Hong Kong, 4 former student leaders were sentenced to 2 years in prison on Monday for charges of inciting violence through their praise of a man who stabbed a police officer. The 4, Kinson Chung, Charles Kwok, Chris Todorovsky, and Anthony Yoon, are being held responsible for passing a motion in a students' union council that expressed deep sadness and appreciated the sacrifice of Leung Kin Fai, a man who took his own life on July 1, 2021, after stabbing a police officer. They were originally charged with advocating terrorism under Beijing's national security law imposed on Hong Kong following the 2019 pro-democracy protests. This charge was dropped after they pleaded guilty last month to the current charge of incitement to wound with intent. Beijing's security law has prosecuted and silenced most activists in Hong Kong who were involved in the pro-democracy protests. The Chinese government says the law brought stability to the city after the period of unrest. In Europe, Spanish authorities announced Monday the seizure of some 720 kilos of cocaine hidden among scrap metal in a truck. Police said the drugs arrived in the southern port city of Malaga from Costa Rica at the end of September. The cocaine was hidden in a safe buried under piles of metal scraps in the truck's container. Police had to use drills and tweezers in order to uncover the illegal cargo. Spanish authorities said that 8 people were arrested across the Andalusia region in connection with the find. The bus is the latest in a series of operations undertaken by Spanish police, adding to the 9.5 tons of cocaine found in containers of bananas from Ecuador in August. Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, announced on Monday that its users in Europe will be offered the option to pay and subscribe to ad-free versions of the social media platforms. It is giving this option as a means to comply with the EU's strict data privacy rules. Following an EU court ruling in July to uphold the decision by German antitrust regulators that Meta's data harvesting methods are abusive, the firm had to come up with alternatives to meet Europe's data privacy standards. Starting in November this year, users of the app on desktop browsers can pay around €10, while mobile phone application users will pay around €13 for the advertisement-free subscription. The monthly plan is available for all users in the EU, European Economic Area, and Switzerland. Argentinian football legend Lionel Messi has won the men's Ballon d'Or for the 8th time. In the evening ceremony held in Paris on Monday, the 36-year-old former Barcelona and Paris Saint-Germain star, who now plays for Inter Miami, was once again recognized for his contribution to Argentina's victory at the Qatar World Cup last year. He has won the most Ballon d'Or awards in history, 3 more than Cristiano Ronaldo. For women's award, the Ballon d'Or Feminine, the 25-year-old Spain and Barcelona midfielder Aitana Bonmati won it for the first time. Bonmati was recognized for her success in club and country level, including a Women's World Cup win this summer. Meanwhile, South Korean defender Kim Min-jae came 22nd in the men's Ballon d'Or final rankings. Kim Seong, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. West Coast and inland areas were covered with thick fog this morning. Commuters had a rough morning commute with a low visibility warning issued at some airports on Korea's west side. That's including Gimpo International Airport and Gwangju Airport. In fact, the capital area Chungcheongdo and Ulsan could have high levels of dust at times today. As for the temperatures, it's the last day of October, but it feels more like the earlier part of the month. And the foggy start is turning into a stunning afternoon under bright skies. It is a good day for an autumn stroll or an impromptu outing in most places. Afternoon highs are similar to yesterday, hovering in the low 20s. Seoul topping out at 21 degrees Celsius. Daegu, Gwangju, Busan, Jeju all topping out at 23 degrees. Then frequent rain is in the forecast in central parts of the country for the rest of the week, with temperatures staying way above the season norms. Then a November chill awaits us next week, so please enjoy the warmth while you can. Well, that's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
And those are the headlines at this hour here in Korea. Coming up next is our panel session with our foreign correspondents. Do stay with us.